Well, welcome to Focus Today. We got some great guests today, and I am really honored to have with us Stephen Estes with us. He is a pastor and an author of several books, and we're going to be talking to him about the stress of Christmas. Yes, and we'll talk to him about that. He is also a teacher, and he teaches a preaching class at Westminster Theological Seminary. So you teach preaching, Stephen?
Well, if you can teach it, it's more caught than taught, but I try. I really do, and I love working with those guys, yeah.
Well, you know, I'll never forget my first year of Bible college when I was learning that. It was in that class. I don't know. I can't remember the name of the class. And I walked to the pulpit with all my notes to give my class, you know, to preach to my class. And the professor walks up and takes my notes away, and he says, "Now preach from your heart."
It helps to have the head there, too, though, doesn't it?
I was so lost, but it taught me a great lesson.
That's great, Barry. That's great. I'll remember that in class.
What's that?
I'll remember that in this class.
Yeah, just walk up. When you get some smart guy, just reach up and take his notes away and tell him to preach now.
Okay, Phil.
Nice to have you with us. Good to see you. Merry Christmas to you.
Good to be in Oregon with you by Skype.
Okay. Well, listen, tell us about the stress of Christmas and how we can apply Proverbs to get us on the right track here.
Oh, Perry. You know, about 1,000 years before Christ, this guy Solomon, who was the king of Israel, wrote a little book, tiny little book called Proverbs. And when I read through it a few years ago, again, with the questions of Christmas in mind, it seemed to me like he was looking right in my living room every December. I mean, when I think of, you know, credit card judgment day that comes in January because I've stressed a little too much, getting a little too much, or when I can't think about what to buy in Edith, you know, or when I am sitting in a waiting line, actually you're always standing, aren't you? Or thinking about maybe you're thinking about people you're related to who are in-laws from a horror flick that might be eating Christmas dinner with you. Those kinds of stresses really put people through the ringer in the year's 12th month. And for other people, it's not stress, it's sadness. You know, they've lost a child, or their wife took off with another guy 6 months ago, or they've lost their job. And therefore, Christmas is both simultaneously the most joyful time of year, and it's the hardest time of year. And 3,000 years ago, Solomon knew about that, even though he hadn't experienced Christmas yet. Yeah.
You titled the book Called to Die, A Better December. Interesting title.
Yeah, well, Called to Die was one of my former books about Chet Bitterman, a guy I went to college with. But A Better December, sure. The idea is that despite the stress and the melancholy of Christmas, that God's wisdom that he gave to Solomon really can give a person a better December. I think about Solomon's little zingers of wisdom, just to give your listeners a feel of what he does. Who has not experienced, who has little kids, on the 12th month of the year, Christmas morning in the pre-dawn hours, the little urchins burst through the door, "Merry Christmas, get up, Mom and Dad." They jump into bed, you know, and you can hardly wipe the sleep out of your eyes. Yeah. Well, Solomon says that he who greets his neighbor with a loud voice early in the morning, it will be taken as a curse. And that's exactly what happened. So to give you a little idea that Solomon knows what's going on the 25th of December. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, tell your kids that. You're a curse.
Yeah, right. Paraphrase it, don't quote it. Yeah, I hear you.
This actually could be used as an outreach tool too, right, to unbelievers?
Oh, heavens, yes. That's really, Perry, that's largely what I had in mind. If you walk across the street and ring the doorbell of a neighbor in, let's say, July, and give him a book by Billy Graham or anybody like that, he's liable to feel evangelized. But if in December you ring the doorbell of a neighbor, hand them some cookies, show them a little kindness, maybe a Christmas ornament, and give them, you know, a little book like A Better December, it's the thin little thing, or a New Testament or some other spiritual read. When you do that, people feel loved and they feel cared for. And I wrote this book to introduce Jesus through the back door. Jesus doesn't appear in this book until, I would say, probably 80% of the way through, because I wanted to draw people with stories and with poems and with lighthearted fun from Proverbs that gradually pulls you in and lets you know God has some wisdom for you. And only later do you find out who is the real wisdom from God who came at Christmas. Yeah.
All right. Share with us one of those stories, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, I think of one. My wife grew up, I'm an hour west of Philadelphia, and my wife grew up in an Amish family on an Amish farm when she was little.
Wow.
And her parents, when they became Christian believers, they left the Amish community because there wasn't as much Bible teaching there, say, as you would get in maybe a more evangelical church. And they stayed farmers, though. So my wife grew up with all the practical, hardworking impulses of an Amish woman. She could work circles around any woman I know. We have 8 children. And so one Christmas, though, she thought, why don't I get a little exotic, you know? She found some glossy photoed cookbook that had desserts that would promise, you know, the perfect Christmas from the days of yore. And so she tried this dessert that she had worked on all day or several days. All the kids were gathered around the table, candlelight, the platter comes out, big drum roll, you know. You just expect Courier and Ive to show up any second. And then, as we all took our first bite of it, you know, no one wants to say anything. But my goodness, finally, somebody just can't, they just start laughing. And then everybody's slapping the table. And then Verna just kind of meekly kind of whisks away the mistake, you know, to another room. And it just reminded me of what Proverbs says, Solomon says in Proverbs, about Christmases, that you can never get them perfect. That you may make many plans, Solomon says, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. That is, God sprinkles disappointments into your December to keep your eyes focused not totally on this world, but thinking about the next life where the real Christmas comes, where the real holiday is. I tell a lot of stories like that in this book.
Oh, it's wonderful. A Better December. You may want to check it out at the bookstores. There, we have a picture up on our screen now for those watching on the Dove TV. And check it out at the bookstores. A Better December by Stephen Estes. Yeah, and Perry, I should say that stores and websites have been selling out of them, not because it's such a greatly written book, but because the nature of what it talks about is so powerful. I think New Growth Press is probably the best place to get it now, because it's the publisher. New Growth Press is probably where it's almost certainly available. All right, give us, before we run out of time, Stephen, give us some more Solomon tips real quick. Oh, my goodness. Well, he says a number of things. He says that God understands you at Christmas when you're sad. He says this: the heart knows its own bitterness, and no one understands its joy. That means that your spouse, your lover, your child, your parents, your friends, nobody really knows you perfectly at Christmas and the melancholy that you feel or the sadness that you feel. But that leads to the New Testament, where it says that Jesus of Nazareth looked around at a crowd of needy people, and then it says that Jesus knew their thoughts. That is, the Son of God, who made you flesh and blood, knows you intimately and became flesh and blood in order to live inside you and get you through the stress and the sadness of the holidays. That's what this book is all about. It's why I wrote it, in order for Christians primarily to give it to a friend who's not yet a Christian believer, to show them the beauty and the winsomeness and the love of our Savior, the Messiah. Beautiful. Well, thank you, Stephen, for your time. I know you're on a fast track, and I appreciate the time. And you got anything new you're working on in the way of a book? Perry, I'm going to start as soon as Christmas is over, but right now I've been thinking about this, the neighbors and so forth, and having nice interviews with you like this. I really appreciate you having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Well, our honor to have you. And again, it's called A Better December, and there's a picture of it up on the screen. Let me encourage you to check it out by Stephen Estes at the bookstore. And where else can they get it real quickly, Stephen? Again, at a website of the publisher called New Growth Press. It's almost always there. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, my friend. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to you, sir. Okay, God bless. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at the Dove TV. Did you know that when you support the Dove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Welcome back to Focus Today. Well, have you ever thought about just giving it all up to go help somebody else? It's kind of like the ultimate missionary call, and I think There's nothing like the call of a missionary where they leave the familiarity of family and friends and home life and country to go somewhere else to help somebody where a lot of times even the language is a barrier. Well, earlier, Steve Johnson had a chance to talk to Hilary Alan. She's a former public relations professional and the author of a book called Sent. Talks about her family's experience in surrendering their entire American dream to go help the people there who have been affected by the tsunami-ravaged Southeast Asia area. So let's join Steve and Hilary in their discussion.
As you've heard, the book is called Sent. It's with Hilary Alan, and she is our guest today. I think the subtitle is always interesting in books like this, How One Ordinary Family Traded the American Dream for God's Greater Purpose. Why don't you tell us what led you to Southeast Asia, because you had been living a normal, if one can put it that way, a normal life in the United States, right?
That's right, Steve. And actually, God's call for us to go to Southeast Asia came about in a very unexpected way. We weren't aiming in that direction. It's probably the last thing we would have expected. But we were on our way to a vacation, actually, when we first saw the pictures of the 2004 tsunami in Asia. And to be completely honest and transparent with you, our first reaction was, wow, that looks so bad. And then they said, we were stopping in a car dealership having a car repair done on our way down to Florida. And they said, your car's ready. And we thought, great, let's go. We're on vacation. And we never gave it another thought. And then a few weeks after that, we were at our home church, and our pastor, who had previously served in the part of the world, one of the parts of the world where the tsunami was, made a call for volunteers. And he said, I need people with water purification, construction, and medical experience to go. And I need as many of you to go for as long as possible. And my husband was an IT director, and he stood up and said, I don't meet any of those qualifications, but I feel like I'm supposed to go.
What had your husband been doing?
He was an IT director at a software company.
Okay.
And so they said, what's your background? And kind of, okay, thanks for offering.
Yeah.
And then a couple of weeks after that, we got a call saying that he was exactly the person that they needed because so much relief money had been pouring into the area, and they needed someone with business expertise to come and write project proposals and manage a lot of the relief money that was coming in. And so he didn't meet any of the requirements initially, but he turned out to be exactly the person they were looking for. And he went over for a 6-week short-term, if you will, volunteer trip without us, just by himself. And then shortly after he returned from that, he knew God was calling our whole family to go. So about a year after he came back, the 4 of us went.
Wow. So, and this started because your church got involved in this relief effort. Is that right?
Right. Our pastor had a personal interest in the particular area that we worked in because he had previously worked in that area. So he had connections, and he knew of the need. I mean, the whole world knew of the need, but he was determined to put people from our church in that area and get started helping immediately.
Okay, so then your family, your whole family, which was you and your husband and children?
We have 2 children who were 11 and 14 when we decided to go over.
Okay, so you head over there. What were you expecting to do there?
We were community developers, so the kind of relief phase of the tsunami recovery was being phased out, and now the development part was being phased in. So returning livelihood to people who had lost, their means of income, and just, providing counseling and training for teachers, because thousands of teachers were lost in the tsunami. So bringing expertise from the states and training teachers in the area. We also did professional development seminars. Our team did redevelop communities on the ground as well, particular villages, by rebuilding homes, building community centers, but going into the villages and talking to the residents and hearing from them, what their needs were, as opposed to this is what we think they need.
I see. And so how long were you there initially?
We were there for 3 years.
Oh, 3 years. Wow. You knew it was going to be that long?
No. Initially, we signed a contract for 2 years, but we weren't ready to go home after 2 years. We were, by then we thought, we feel like we're just getting started. We were enjoying it too much, and we knew there was so much more to do. So it was easy to stay another year.
Wow. And so did your position there, what you were doing, shift? It must have, from tsunami relief to something else, right?
It did. Initially, like I said, we were involved in rebuilding communities. Mm-hmm. And then once the communities that we had been dedicated to seeing rebuilt, and I don't mean just physically, but just, really getting to know the people in those communities and what their needs were and how they could be met. And then kind of spreading our net a little wider to conduct business seminars and trainings for teachers were opened up to the larger population in the city. We also did some counseling. There was a great need for that, you can imagine, after the trauma of the tsunami.
Yeah. Now, your view of how God works, it sounds like that's kind of changed, because you felt a little distant when you were here in the States, and that changed over there. Am I right in that?
It wasn't my view of how God works, as opposed to my relationship with Him.
Well, elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, before we went over there, we considered ourselves serious, Christians, and we attended church, and we were involved in the stuff of church. But through this process of undoing our American lives and going over to Southeast Asia and living and working amongst an unreached people group, it really made us realize that we had been in a relationship with Christ on our terms prior to going overseas. And in Him calling us to Southeast Asia, we really had to finally just, stop living in our own strength, because we were so ill-equipped for this. We had no previous training or any kind of special experience that would have qualified us to do this. So it was completely of the Lord and in His strength. And, Proverbs 3:5-6 became such a precious verse for our family because we realized how quick we were to not trust in the Lord with all our heart, but really trust in ourselves with all our heart, and then, trust in Him somewhat. Do not lean on your own understanding. Well, most of the time we really were leaning on our own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths. We really learned how to live Proverbs 3:5-6 through this whole experience. Yeah,
well, that's it's always good to have a reference point that otherwise might not have been a reference point unless you were cast into this kind of a situation. What your role now then in Southeast Asia is to do what?
We are not currently working in Southeast Asia. We are currently based in the States.
Okay, so you are back here. Are you going to be heading back there, do you think?
Lord willing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I suppose, the technical parts of it, you have to raise funds, I suppose, to do all this kind of thing initially and to continue, I suppose. Is that right?
We did not have to raise support to go over.
Oh, that's a relief for a lot of people who otherwise have to.
Yes, it is. I have great admiration and respect for people who raise their own support. I know that's not easy.
Yeah. So you're back here and working to in what capacity now?
My husband is the missions pastor at the Summit Church in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and so he trains and equips and facilitates people going to the nations, and I help him in that as his wife, and so I help with counseling and kind of being a coach to people who are in the process to go overseas.
Oh, okay. Now, before you went over because of the tsunami disaster there, what had you been doing again? Review that briefly.
My husband was an IT director at SAS Institute, which is a software company in North Carolina. And I was actually a part-time assistant teacher at one of my children's schools.
Okay, so that's, I think a lot of people can relate to that kind of a scenario. And at that time, you didn't think that you'd ever be doing something like this?
Oh, no. Oh, my word.
What would you say?
Not at all.
What would you say to those?
The funny thing is...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. The funny thing is, now I cannot imagine my life without this being a part of it. But before, I was very happy and content. I thought, I love my life.
Hilary, in the about a minute and a half we have left, why don't you tell us what you would give as suggestions to some people who might feel like they're getting out of their comfort box to do what you did, actually, and go to a foreign country. If they're feeling God tugging them, what advice or suggestion would you have for them?
I would say put your yes on the table. Yes, Lord, I'll go wherever you tell me to go, and I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Read the Word very intentionally. And just remember and claim every one of His promises. He's gone before you. He promises to be with you, and His grace really and truly is sufficient. So believe that and trust in that. When you believe God is who He says He is and trust that God is who He says He is, obedience is easy. It's not necessarily an easy road to walk, but He's going to be with you. And when Jesus said, "Follow me," the biblical response is, "Yes, Lord."
I suppose that because of this experience, you're leaving your table pretty free and open for God moving you. That could be anywhere, I suppose, even if it's just staying where you are right now, right?
Absolutely. To be honest with you, it's hard to be back in the States. I long for and miss Southeast Asia every single day.
Wow. Hilary Alan, the author of a book called Sent, How One Ordinary Family Traded the American Dream for God's Greater Purpose. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there you go, giving it all up to serve others. Well, coming up next, it's always an honor to have with us Phyllis Schlafly, and she has some interesting comments about her recent article on HHS reports only 106,000 have picked up and signed up for the ObamaCare. What does that mean? And what are her thoughts on this whole issue? Well, we'll talk to her next here on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
And we are always honored when we have the opportunity to talk to Phyllis Schlafly. She is one of the conservative warriors out there and has been in the fight for many, many years. She's an attorney. She's an author, an editor of over 20 books. And by the way, if you're not getting her monthly newsletter, you're really missing out. And let me encourage you to check it out. It's called the Phyllis Schlafly Report. And get a hold of that and read it, because she is terrific and she'll keep you posted on a lot of the key issues. Phyllis, what a delight to have you. Merry Christmas, my friend.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you, Perry. Always good to join you.
Yeah, wow. Well, listen, we're watching the Obama mess, the ObamaCare mess like anybody else, and HHS attempt to infringe upon our religious freedoms, and your article is very alarming. What are your initial thoughts, and even as a result of yesterday's hearings with Sebelius still trying to talk her way out of this thing?
Oh, well, it's obvious that Obama lied to us about Obamacare. And it isn't any accident. It wasn't just a slip of the tongue. He said that lie 37 times. Somebody did a count. And telling us that you can keep your insurance if you like it. And it's simply not true. And the press accepted what he said was his apology, but he did not apologize for lying to us. I read that statement very carefully, and he used the word sorry, but he was sorry that people misunderstood. It wasn't our fault. And so I think there are just now thousands of people who would like to keep the insurance they already had, and what they're being forced to buy now is more expensive, and covers things they don't need, like sex change operations and pregnancy if you're over 50 and a man, and it's ridiculous.
Well, you know, we watched some of the testimony yesterday there in the hearings, and Secretary Sebelius there trying to talk our way out of it again. We're dangerously close of the Obama administration lying to Congress. Now, it's one thing to lie to the American people, but lying to Congress is criminal, isn't it?
Well, I think it is, but Obama has done so many things that are against the law, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it.
Yeah, that in itself is a national crisis.
You can see where he thinks he can get by with anything.
Yeah.
He just eliminates parts of the law. He thinks he can do by regulation what Congress will not do by legislation. And really, he's trying to rule like a dictator.
Well, he's imperialistic to say the least. Yesterday, it was noted that Dr. James Dobson now is suing over the health care issue because of its infringement on religious freedom. And that lawsuit joins many others, faith-based organizations that feel that the ObamaCare infringement is really needs to be stopped. Do you think these things will go anywhere?
Well, it's up before the Supreme Court now, and we filed a brief in the Hobby Lobby case. That's not a religious institution. That's a business run by a Christian who has his religious beliefs, and he doesn't want to provide abortion procedures to his employees. Mm-hmm. He thinks that's part of his free exercise of religion, and that's up before the Supreme Court now. One court held in Hobby Lobby's favor, but who knows what the Supreme Court will do.
Phyllis, you've been in this battle a long time. In fact, I remember years ago, Eagle Forum, and in fact, the first time I met you was clear back during when you were part of the bicentennial of the Constitution. And have you ever thought in your lifetime that you would see an administration that is as rogue and imperialistic as this one, to the point that we American citizens don't know what to do in order to push back? It doesn't seem like our representatives have the fortitude to do what is right.
Well, you said it very well, and no, I never thought we would have a situation like that. We thought some earlier presidents were going too far and that sort of thing. But Obama is simply disdainful of the other branches of government. He thinks he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And the parts of the law that he doesn't like, the Constitution clearly says that the prime duty of the president is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And people on the night shows, they're making fun of him, but he goes right ahead and does it, and Congress isn't doing anything about it.
Do you think Obama law, as messy as it is and as crazy as it is, will implode, or do you see more Democratic lawmakers defecting as they go into the 2014 election?
Well, there's a new poll out by Cook, whom I think has been a pretty reliable pollster, and he said he has never seen such a dramatic shift in public opinion as he has in the last few weeks over Obamacare, and people shifting from saying they would not vote Democratic but would vote Republican. And well, I'm really hoping that the elections next year will enable us to elect a whole new crowd in the Senate, which will stand up for the Constitution and American rights. And there's some people who are so depressed about it that they think we ought to call a convention of the states to adopt about a dozen new amendments. Well, we need to enforce the Constitution we already have, and I'm not sure these people who are getting together can do as good a job as the Founding Fathers did.
Yeah, I've heard the argument on both sides. It seems to me opening a constitutional convention could be dangerous.
Yeah, it's a can of worms.
Yeah.
Just look what the Democratic convention did last year at their big convention in Charlotte, and the people apparently wanted to put God in their platform, just the word God.
Yeah.
And the chairman took 3 votes, and we could all see on television that the motion to reject this failed, and yet the presiding officer banged his gavel and said it didn't pass and went on.
Yeah,
and nobody does anything about it.
Well, the imperialistic action is it's stunning, absolutely stunning. I ache the fact that we're just allowing this to happen. Did you have a chance to read or respond to the budget deal yesterday?
Well, I'm very doubtful of anything that Paul Ryan does, and Paul Ryan and that female Democratic liberal senator.
Oh, Ann Murray. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure anything they could cook up would be helpful.
All right. So it appears that Obamacare. Well, let me ask you this, Phyllis. Do you think it's possible, if there was a turnover in Congress, that this could be repealed? Because what is so amazing to me, we can't even muster up the guts to ask for a refund from the company that's messed it up.
I think we have the strength to do it. You and I, Perry, and the grassroots. But the problem is that Boehner and the House leadership doesn't have it.
Yeah.
And Harry Reid seems to be able to get by with anything he wants. And if we had a big change in the Senate with a lot of good fighters, Perry, you got to be a fighter to be in politics. It's a battle. It's an ongoing battle all the time.
No question
And
about
if you haven't got a stomach for the battle, get out of politics.
There you go. Well, Phyllis, we love you and appreciate you.
And go on my website for any additional info. It's eagleforum.org.
That's what I wanted to say. Eagleforum.org and get the newsletter. We love you. Merry Christmas to you, and all the best to you and your family.
Merry Christmas, Perry.
God bless. All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, welcome back, and always fun to have Dave Dotterrer in the studio with us today, and he's a retired colonel from the Marine Corps, and we thank you for your service. And he's also a candidate for the state senate. What district is that?
District 3.
District 3.
Southern Jackson County.
Southern Jackson County. It takes in all of those areas, and your opponent is sitting Democratic Senator Alan Bates. But you're here to talk about that and a bunch of things. But let's get into it. Covered Oregon seems to be a mess.
Well, it's terrible, and we're last. We were when this was put together. I remember the discussions that were going on in the legislature.
Right.
And the legislators were told Oregon's going to be on the cutting edge, and we're way ahead of everybody else. And this is going to go very, very well. And the feds gave us, the federal government gave us
$245 million.
A boatload of money.
Yeah.
Lots of money, because they said, here's somebody who's really on the cutting edge, is out there in front of everybody, really wants to jump into this, and look where we are. They just announced that we're dead last in signups.
Well, of course, this all is a bounce from the Oregon Health Plan, which had some traction.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, one of the issues, kind of what you do as a strategist, is when you got a problem and when you're looking at a problem, you need to step back from it and look at the bigger issue here. We can talk about the sign up and the website and can you keep your doctor, all those things, and they're all important. But the answer is that when I look at this, I say, we all were of the opinion that there was a problem with our healthcare system, in spite of the fact that 80% of Americans were happy with their healthcare. But we all knew that the system needed to be changed and it needed to be improved and reformed. But instead, if you start with a faulty premise, no matter how good your analysis, you end up with a faulty conclusion. Well, if you start with the premise that insurance companies are evil and insurance companies need to somehow be controlled, you end up with this analysis that tells you, well, I need to control this system, and you need to take it over. Yeah. And if the government just controlled this, it would work. Well, that has turned out to be faulty. It's a faulty premise. It gets you to a faulty conclusion. And so at the end of the day, you look at this, and it's not as much about health care as it is about control.
How can the governor, and I realize he announced yesterday he's going to go for an unprecedented fourth term. This is his champion piece of legislation, at least it was when it was the Oregon Health Plan, when he was governor previously. How can he go out and champion this as A, working, B, it's going to answer all the things that you just addressed, C, we can afford it? How can he possibly run on any of that?
I don't see how he can. I think this is, people are going to have to stop and step back and say, okay, what pieces of this are better, but this idea that you can take over and control the entire, something as complex as our health delivery system in the United States, much less in Oregon, to me, I think a good word to use for that would be hubris. What is the hubris of somebody who believes that they really know how to run this? And that's what this is. That's what bothers me more than anything about this, because we know that we have systems that when all of us have freedom and make choices, most people are able to make their own choices, and they can take care of it. But all of a sudden we say, oh, you need to control this, and we'll take care of it. And so yes, you don't like, you like your health care plan. Well, we've decided that that's not a good enough health care plan for you, so we'll decide what that health care plan is like. So
where did the $245 million go that came from the feds?
Well, first off, 75, 80 million of it went just to build the website. I mean, the website is...
Okay, look, why aren't we asking for a refund on these failed websites? Why isn't the federal government asking for a refund from the company that it's up over 600 million, and you saying 75, 80 million?
For basically in Oregon. That's cover Oregon, and the rest of it, well, look at all those ads they put out there.
Yeah, right. Okay, that was $10 million ad campaign.
Absolutely.
Which is the dumbest campaign I've ever seen in my life.
Well,
I didn't know what they were selling.
Well, I know, but it was interesting. They came in and briefed the legislature on that.
Really? I thought they were selling the Farmer's Almanac or something.
Well, they claimed that this was that they had a plan laid out that this was going to be sequential. And well, you're not going to like what we've got so far, but we're just setting the stage, and then we're going to go to the next stage. And you listen to this. You know how sometimes you're listening to somebody tell you their plan, and this little antenna goes up in the back of your neck, and it kind of waves around a little bit, and you go, you know what? This doesn't sound right.
Doesn't pass the smell test.
No, there's another good way to say it. As this rocket scientist analyst once told me, when he looked at an analysis, he said, Dave, this just doesn't pass the smell test.
Okay,
so,
let me ask you this. You're drawing on your former military experience, when a program failed in the military, did you keep it going?
No.
What'd you do?
You shoot it.
Well,
you step back from it and you ask yourself the larger strategic question: what did we set out to do here?
Right.
Okay. Now, obviously, we're not getting there, so there must be a plan that we need to change, because we in the military believe that no plan survives first contact with the enemy anyways, so you're just going to have to change it. Okay, I get that. So what are we going to change to? Let's sit down and in a bipartisan way figure out how we're going to do this. So, because we do know that there's a lot of problems with it, but back to your $200+ million, I've heard people actually say, well, that's federal money. And I look around the room and I say, well, wait a minute.
Still came out of your pocket.
Absolutely. Yeah. Who in this room is not a federal taxpayer?
Yeah.
And all. And so you just look at that, and as you watched it, let me give you another example. I checked with some of the folks that I work with in the legislature, and the legislature has a committee that's supposed to be formed called the Audit and IT Committee. Okay? And they're an oversight committee. Notice IT, information technology. And so I asked this guy, I said, well, during the 2013 session, in that almost 6 months, how many times did that committee meet?
No kidding. Zero.
Oh. Zero. They never, so they never brought them in and said, okay, let's sit down. Now, Dennis Richardson did. I can tell you, I was in several meetings with him in which he brought in an analyst from the legislature and the people from Cover Oregon, sat them down at the table just like this, and they went back and forth. And again, that little antenna kept coming up and stuff like that. You could see that there was going to be problems, but they kept assuring us that, don't worry about it, we're going to fix this. We've got the resources to do this. Well, that's not panned out. And so this legislative oversight is what bothers me a lot.
All right. Now, let's say you get elected to the Senate and you go in there. What can be done? I mean, we citizens are so frustrated because not only at the state level, but at the national level, we're sitting back, we're the average citizens out there, we get it, this thing's a mess, let's stop it, let's start over. We can't seem to penetrate this bureaucratic wall out there. We can't see them. They're not listening. They're not saying, "Stop this."
Yeah, stop.
You know,
you're absolutely right. You need to elect legislators that are going to say, "Time out.
Yeah,
this is not working."
Right.
Okay, now let's hit the pause button, and now we'll sit down in a bipartisan way and work through this, because it was clearly a partisan solution, and so those are the things that really need to be done at the state legislative level. You just got to recognize that, again, it's not working, and so there are pieces of it that are working. There's the coordinated care organizations, for example. That's working out okay. There's some pieces of this that you don't want to throw that out. But what bothers me is what we essentially did was we decided that because the system was in such bad shape, we had to throw the baby out with the bathwater in a lot of cases, and we completely took it over, and that's not the way we do business.
Well, we're starting to see pushbacks now. I know in California, 7 out of 10 doctors are saying, no, fine us, we don't care. I mean, we'd rather not do anything than get wrapped up in this thing. When you're starting to see those kind of pushbacks, are we heading towards some kind of a insurrection? Are we heading towards some kind of a constitutional crisis? I mean, both at the state and the federal level, because we got a governor and a president that seems to be modifying things on the fly. I mean, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can't. They can't do that.
But we don't have the power to push it back.
That's right. And that's where, again, this is something that your elected representatives should be doing, which is because they have the power of the purse. They're the ones that should be setting the policy. And the policy was set wrong. Now, what's the mechanism for undoing this? And you're not going to see a lot of people. Remember, once you get intellectually invested in something, the answer tends to be, if I just do more of it. Okay, well, we just didn't do enough.
Yeah,
and that's clearly the wrong thing to do here. We're on the wrong path.
All right, now you're running against Alan Bates. He is a physician, and I know he's championed or the Oregon Healthcare Plan a lot, heavily. I haven't talked to him since the Cover Oregon, which is the new name on the same thing. But you would think as a physician he would be against this thing, but he's still pushing it. Do you have any idea why?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, he believes in a single-payer system. So he believes that eventually we are going to end up at a single payer. So as you march down that path toward a single payer, one of the dangers that I see with Cover Oregon is that all of a sudden people say, you guys are absolutely right, it did fail. See, what we really need is...
Well...
Yeah, I believe in the minds of an awful lot of people.
That's the ultimate
That's the ultimate solution. So in a sense, for them, it's almost a victory that it doesn't succeed in its initial pieces, because then they can say, well, see, we need to move here.
That sounds very conspiratorial, but do you think that's possible? I'm not saying that against you, but
no.
But if on the national level, this thing is such a mess. Let's throw it all out. Let's just tax everybody and go to single payer.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
Yes. I think I believe in a lot of people's minds that is the ultimate solution. Yeah. And Alan has said on numerous occasions that he believes that eventually we will end up with a single payer system. Okay, so now you have to look at, is this just an interim solution that we're looking at that moves us to this, or what is it? Where are we? And you don't have to be conspiratorial. You just have to watch. Just watch the trends. It
appears that they really wanted this system to work, but now that it's failed, they have the ultimate default, which is single payer. Okay,
absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, what a mess.
Perry, you can't make this up.
No, you can't. I don't think there's a novel person out there that writes novels that could come up with this one.
Right.
Let me shift you real quick to one of your heartstrings, Toys for Tots.
Oh,
how's it going?
Oh, it's going well. We're getting toys in. We're getting a lot of toys in.
What do people do that want to get involved in it?
Well, if they want to get involved in it, there are numerous places. Every fire station, for example, and what we're asking for
banks, I think, too.
Like in Ashland, we put out 18 boxes. Banks, real estate agencies, car dealerships, the fire station, the police station, all those. And what they're looking for is new unwrapped toys. Because what we're going to do again this year is we're going to go back to bringing the parents in to the room and let them shop for their children and walk through the room, and they pick the toy for their child. We don't bag it.
So unwrapped toys. If you see the Toys for Tots boxes in any of these establishments, I was in the bank yesterday. I looked in there. There's a bunch of things in there. I thought, this is great.
Yeah.
So when do parents come, and how do
that's what the distribution is going to be on the 21st.
Okay.
And we're picking up toys all next week. And it's and they can. There's a website.
Okay.
There's a website for the Rogue Valley distribution, and it's through the Marine Corps League. And the reason the Marine Corps League here does this is there's no Marine Reserve unit to do this in the Rogue Valley. So the Marine Corps League has taken this on, and it's really grown. For example, I'm getting a lot of support from Southern Oregon University's Army ROTC cadets. They're helping me. So I got the Army helping the Marines, and you go, you know. This is bipartisanship. This is how
military bipartisanship.
This is military bipartisanship. We know how to make this work. Yeah. So it's really great to have them.
Well,
help
let
us.
me encourage you folks, if you're out going around, look, there's a lot of needs out there, and you just kind of go where the Lord's leading you to go. I know Salvation Army's hams and turkeys, so does the Gospel Mission. And if you are buying toys and you see one of these Toys for Tots boxes in any of these establishments, drop it in there. And it really, and unwrapped, I think that's the key. So you can create the shopping environment for parents who need to do this. What an incredible, and this has been going on for years, hasn't it?
It's in 1947, and I believe the last number I saw was that since 1947, the Marine Corps Reserve, through the Toys for Tots program, has handed out 37 million toys.
Really?
It's one of the largest nonprofits, charities in the United States. It's huge.
I've seen various groups get behind it, motorcycle groups and everybody else, going around grabbing up toys. And
right. No, you're right. You sometimes you look around and you say, wow, what a diverse group of people supporting this. But it's all for a good thing.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah,
all right, so check it out.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, this is interesting times, and I would assume things are going to heat up campaign-wise after the first of the year as you get going. But you don't have an opponent, do you, in the primary?
In the primary, no.
Okay.
No.
So it'll be primarily you and Alan. And I know Alan personally. He's a good guy. We agree to disagree on all these issues. But I was just kind of scratching my head. What's the motivation of a physician on Obamacare, which really does them under? And then I think you fast forwarded to the single payer issue, and I go, oh, well, there it is.
Yeah. You know, the folks that put this together have got to own this. This is where we are.
But will the American public trust those who gave us Obamacare and cover Oregon and say, all right, that's a mistake. We're going to trust you now to give us single payer?
I hope not.
Okay.
I hope not. No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because what makes you think that if they can't make Obamacare work, they can make single payer work? And people say, well, these other countries do it. We're not these other countries.
Yeah.
This is America. This is America. America does things differently.
Yeah. So capitalism.
Right. Yeah. And we have the state federalist system, and we're constitutionally different.
All right. Good. Hey, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Good seeing you.
Don't forget
again.
Toys for Tots. Look for it in banks, real estate offices, car dealerships, or wherever you see one of those Toys for Tots boxes. If you can afford and your budget allows, grab a toy, don't wrap it, stick it in those boxes, and it'll be distributed to needy families within the next week or so. We'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.